And I think we have a chance just to take some baby steps here to really make things better. But when we get those things right, when we're well rested and we're well hydrated and we eat the right things and we don't eat the wrong things and we have relational strength and stability around us, who doesn't want to sign up for that? And yet it is an opportunity for us to make progress today. Anybody listening, we all can do better. We know that. And so I just would encourage every single person to really think about, if you have that stuff right outside of work, how much better are you going to be when you get to work? You're going to be more productive. You're going to create a competitive advantage. You're going to be more fun to work with. You're going to have more passion when you get there. All that stuff.
We're your co-hosts, Vicky and Laura, and this is the Resilient Entrepreneurs Podcast, the ultimate guide for ambitious business founders and startups. Hear from business heroes who've faced unexpected challenges as we unpack how they slayed their dragon and reignite your instinct to conquer your dragon.
Hello and welcome to Resilient Entrepreneurs Podcast. Randy, we are so excited to have you here talking to us today. We know this is going to be a good one. So let's jump right into it. I often like to start conversations with, like your childhood. Let's go right back to your backstory. But I think today we're going to start a little bit different. And I want to start at the beginning of your entrepreneurial story. So can you take us back to that time when you first maybe jumped off the ledge, made that decision to go out and start your own business? Tell us what that was like.
I can. Thank you for having me, Vicky, Laura, both of you guys. I'm excited to hang out with you today. I just had a flashback to maybe to fear, I would say. I remember that time when I was debating, I'm really going to try to do this. And I had been, years ago, I had been a school teacher for a little while. And then I ended up working in a nonprofit for almost 20 years. And I got to a point where I thought I want to try to see if I can help more leaders. And I wanted to try to speak and write and coach and all these things. And I kind of had my toe in the water a little bit with some stuff that I was doing. But I remember I'll be actually 60 this year. I was 48 at the time. It's been almost 11 years now. And I got to a point where I went to the guy I work for, and I said, "Hey, I need your blessing. I'm actually about to quit my job." And I said, "Here's the point I'd got to." I said, "If I don't get your blessing, I'm still going to quit." So I was leaving. I mean, I was at that point. But looking back, the fear part was my Laura. My wife's name is Laura as well. She and I have 4 daughters, and 2 of the girls were in college at the time, and 2 were about to go to college. And who in their right mind quits their job at 50 and goes and tries something else? And yet I gave myself this, I guess, speech, I would say. I told myself, if you don't give this a shot, you're going to get, at some point in your life, you're going to be an old man, and you're going to look back and you're going to wonder what if, and you're going to have regret, and you're going to have disappointment and all that stuff. And I literally told myself, if you go give this a shot and you can't pull it off, you will be disappointed in yourself that you don't have what it takes to do it, but you probably won't have regret if you try. And I thought, and literally, this is how simple it was. I thought, I can live with disappointment. I don't want to live with regret. And so that was it. And the girls and Laura were like, go for it. And they were very supportive. And honestly, the very first year ended up exceeding all my expectations. There still was lots of courage that needed to be shown. And I did learn lots of resilience along the way, but it just exceeded expectations and then just began to grow over time. And now here we are 11 years later. And I guess we've got about 25 people that are helping us do what we're trying to do now. So if you'd have told me then that someday there's going to be this 25 person team that's helping you, that would have felt a lot easier than just, I'm out by myself. Can I make this work? So I totally get it. I know your listeners are all over the map here when it comes to courage, but I just believe that really good leaders are comfortable being courageous. They're not comfortable being comfortable. And I had gotten to a point where I was a little disengaged, and I was really struggling. And so I needed that courage moment, I guess, was. So the flashbacks are real when I think about it, Laura.
Oh, I love that story. That's so real, Randy. That is so real. And I love that because one of my mantras as when I was younger, and I don't know, I haven't really used it recently, but it might be time to pull it out of the cupboard again, is, regret not it's better to regret doing something than to regret not doing it. And I heard you say that in a slightly different way. It's really about leaning into the courage. And I think there's so much uh, room for courage as an entrepreneur. And now, Randy, you've written a book that really talks about winning where it matters most. Where does it matter most? Where is it important to win?
Hang on, hold that thought. I apologize for the interruption. I just wanted to take 15 seconds of your time to thank you for being a part of this growing community of resilient entrepreneurs. If you could do us just one massive favor and subscribe, you'll be notified of the next great episode of this podcast. And speaking of great episodes, let's get right back to it.
Well, I have. I say our company, we spend most of our time with leaders and organizations, helping them with culture and engagement and execution and leadership, all that kind of stuff, because companies really, they need to be well led. I dream of a world well led. I mean, I think it's important. We know when we have a good leader, things are good for us. And when we don't have a good leader, things are not so good. So that's what we work on most of the time. But I started talking to all these executives and the coaching we do and the consulting we do, all this stuff. And I kept finding people saying, we're using what you're talking about at work and things are great, but things are not so great outside of work. And so I believe, and I've got a copy of the book here, I'll hold it up. I believe winning begins at home. I think it's important to win at work, but I always say if you win at work and you lose at home, I think you still lose. I don't think the goal is just to build some great company or organization, team, whatever you have going on, and then forfeit the things outside of work. Most of us, and it may not even be a family that we're talking about here, but if you think about the old 9 to 5 versus what happens from 5 to 9, to me, the quality of our lives happens so much outside of work. And so family is important to most people. I mean, all around the world, you have listeners, and all of us are a part of a family in one way, shape, or form. And we understand the importance of that. But if things are not right at home, it just makes it hard. And it's not just our family, it's also how we handle our money and how we take care of our energy and our physical bodies and all that kind of stuff. There's so much that happens outside of work. But I think those are the things that actually positions us to win more at work, position us to win more at work. And if we miss that, we can just try to be successful at work, and then I think that's where we get to the end of our life and look back and think the things that mattered most, maybe I sacrificed those, and I think that really is where regret lies, Vicky, if you think about it that way.
Yeah. What are the consequences if you don't focus on succeeding at home too?
Yeah, well, I do. Like I said, I think that's where regret lies. I think one of the things I envision is years ago. You'll remember author Stephen Covey talked about beginning with the end in mind. He wrote the book. What was it? 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, I think was the name of the book. But one of them was begin with the end in mind. And he has. I sat through a training. This has been maybe 25 years ago when he was teaching this. And one of the things he said was, I want you to envision you're at your funeral and and write your eulogy kind of mindset. And I'm thinking, well, I'd rather envision myself at my 80th birthday party. So I know we're all going to have a funeral, but let's go to our 80th birthday
I like
party.
that better. I
Yeah,
like that
exactly.
better.
And who doesn't? And let's think about who would be at that party if you think about it. And if you're married, your spouse would probably be there if they're still alive, and your kids if you have children, your coworkers, your family, your friends, all the people that mean the most to you would be there. What would they say on that day? And I started thinking a lot about that. And one of the things that I talk about actually in the book is this question I ask myself all the time: how would I live my life in such a way that the people who know me the best would actually be able to love me the most? I know so many people who the people who know them the best actually maybe respect them the least. I'm one way at work, but when I come home, I'm not the same way. I'm this way in public, but in private, it's different. I have different habits and thoughts. That's not what I wanted. I wanted to have a life that was congruent both at work and at home, and that's what I really would encourage everybody who's listening to give some thought to. What does success look like? You get to define that. Every listener does. But I think if you don't give thought to that and you, how would we say it? If you live by default and you just hope that things will get better, we always say hope is not a strategy. Maybe you don't want to bet your future on a maybe. You practice your way to where you want to go, and you behave your way to high performance is the way we'd say it to companies. So I think the same thing is true at home. We need to know what are those things that are true in my life. What are those fundamentals that I can put in my life that would cause the people that know me the best to actually not only love me the most, maybe they would like me a little better. And if I don't think about that, I don't design my life that way. I just live by default. I think it's very unlikely that I get to that party and there may not even be anybody there that wants to be there at that point. They may have to come because they're family, but or coworkers. You're probably retired at that point. But I like the idea of being intentional and living by design, not by default. And I think we're not only in the workplace does that work, but I think it works at home as well.
Yeah, and so true for entrepreneurship because we really never leave work. I don't know. Am I speaking on behalf of all entrepreneurs? It feels like we never really leave work. I get voice messages from Miss Laura when she's driving home after dropping the kids to school because that's where her greatest thinking happens. She gets voicemails from me late at night or in the early morning. It's just the way it is. We're always on. We're always thinking. We're always designing and up leveling and so what is the metric? How do we measure success or winning?
I'll take a little side road here, Vicky. People ask me all the time, especially since the book's come out, how do you balance work and home? Is there a like work life balance? We hear this all the time, and I think there's a myth that we'll spend 50% of our time here and 50% of our time there. That's actually not going to work. We all know we're going to spend more time at work, our waking hours. We're going to spend more time at work than we do at home. I think the key is when you're home to be at home, to be there when you're there, so to speak. And to your point, it is so easy now in our culture. Technology is everywhere. We're tethered to it all the time. And if we're not careful, we can be at home and fool ourselves into thinking that we're really present with the people that we're with. And yet we're thinking about the email, we're thinking about the details, we're thinking about the project, the goal, the next thing. And we can literally go through the motions. If you have little kids, you're reading bedtime stories to your kids and you realize you're not even there. And I think over time, if you stack those days, and I have people tell me sometimes, well, this is just a season I'm in. Well, what I've noticed is seasons become patterns. If we're not careful, we'll justify it. I'm going to get to that. And when they're older, I'll be there. And if you don't set that priority on the front side of being present with the people who matter most, I think you can forfeit those relationships. And I have people tell me all the time, it's like I have really messed up in this area, which is cool to admit that. I mean, it's not cool to be there. We don't want to be in that spot, but we have to start where we are. We don't have to stay there. We actually can make progress just by recognizing that actually there's some things that we can do to move. So how do you measure it? Again, I don't know that this is a number, but I would go back to what I said a minute ago. Do the people around your life really respect you, love you, like you? Even I shared some of this in a talk I did a few weeks ago, and I had a guy come up to me, very successful executive, owns a company, and he said I just recognize my wife and I, we just don't really like each other at this point. And he went and called her, and he said we spent about 15 minutes on the phone, and there were some tears, but he said I'm going to change that. And I think it's just as simple as that. We make a decision to prioritize what matters most. So I don't know if that's a metric or not, but I think you can have some conversations with the people around you about these kind of topics. And the next thing you know, you do begin to make progress. I think the challenge is, if I could just add one more thing, I think the challenge is when I go to work, there are promotions to be had, there's a performance review, there are goals to chase. I mean, it's all kind of defined. When I'm at home, it feels really squishy. And so that honestly was why we wrote the book. We felt like there needed to be a resource for leaders to help them have a blueprint. We use that language, a blueprint to build the family that they want, rather than just, again, hoping that things turn out okay. I think it's very unlikely if we just wing it that we're going to get where we want to go.
Yeah, and I think that's a big part of leadership is being really intentional about your time because time is such a limited resource. It's one of those things we can't make more of. We have what we have, and like you said, it's from 5 to 9. You know, by 9 p.m., your kids are in bed. You've missed the window. If you're getting home at 8 o'clock, from working all day, like you miss the window. So, what are some actionable things, or what are some parts of that blueprint that you just mentioned that leaders need to start implementing to really help find some balance? Like, I'm not a big believer in work life balance being 100% equal. I know realistically it never will, and some things are going to be up and some things are going to be down, but we all want to get a little less extreme and get somewhere in the middle so that we're feeling good. So help us with some of those ideas, some of those blueprints that the leaders can take on right now to help
Yeah.
things.
Yeah, I think okay. So let's start with a winning statement like, "I want the people who know me the best to love me the most." So how that sounds great, but how would you do that? And I think it starts with, let's just as make it as simple as being there when we're there. We mentioned that. So what does that look like? Well, when I leave work, let's say I don't work in my home. A lot of people that are listening, they work at home, and so this makes it even more of a challenge. You're in the basement or you're in the other room, and you're coming. You just work never goes away. It feels like you just walk into the next room and it's there. But I would say if I work offsite and I'm coming back home, can you mark a place, maybe a traffic light or a stop sign? If when you pass that sign, you leave work at work. You make a conscious decision when you get to that spot that you can think about work until you get there. But when you get to that spot, you begin to think about home. You begin to think about your spouse, your kids, your workout, whatever you've got going on that's important to you. And I like that marker where I can say, okay, I'm going to make a shift here because both you ladies know there has never been a day. I'm guessing this is true for you. I've never left work one day and thought there's just nothing else to do. I mean, there's literally nothing else to do. It's all done. All the work is never done. We know that. And so there'll always be more work. And somebody else, let's think about it this way, somebody else actually could do some of your work, but no, there really is nobody else who can fulfill your relational responsibilities at home. If you're a mom or a dad, you're the only mom or dad that your kids are going to have. If you're a spouse, you're the only husband or wife that your spouse will have. And as you think about taking care of your body and your finances or your hobbies, all of those are yours. You're the only one who can take care of you. And so I think we just miss that sometimes, and if we're not careful, again, we cross that stop sign or that traffic light, and we just bring it with us, and then we're constantly, one more email. Oh, I just need one more text message, and I'll even see families. You'll go to a restaurant, you'll see families sitting around a table, and there'll be four of them. Let's say a mom and a dad and a couple of kids, and the mom and dad are, checking messages from work or scrolling social media, and the two kids got video games or a TV show going, and they're together, and they're not really together. And so it's just intentional. You use the word, Laura, is correct. It's just being intentional to turn it off at times. And then once you get home, are there times where you can turn the screens off and have conversations and have a meal together once a day? There's a lot. We could make a list of a lot of things that we could do. And at that meal, what would that look like? Can we, one of the things we used to do, we played what we called the high-low game. And so everybody go around the table. What was the best thing that happened today? And what was your biggest challenge today? And I think just some of those conversations, we're checking in with each other. We begin to know each other. We know we can lean on each other. And we get to decide if we want that kind of family or if we just want to, how you doing? Fine. We move on. And if you stack enough of those days on each other, you're going to get down the road and you're not going to really know each other. And so I think the same things I would say this as a spouse, the same things that caused you on the front side to fall in love, to grow in love, they still work. It's just we stop talking to each other, and I always say proximity does not equal intimacy. What I mean by that is you can live with somebody for a long time and really not be connected to them. It might be a spouse, might be a kid. You can just go through the motions, and then your kid leaves, and they're not really. You're just not connected to them. So I think those are some of the practical ways I think about that question.
For the leader, what is the benefit for them having a strong family bond at home? Like, how does it help the leader with being a better leader, a better boss, a better CEO, a better entrepreneur? How does it help them having a strong family? What's the benefit?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. I would say when I think about the best leaders I know, there typically is what I would describe as stability in their life. Now, there are people that have disruption in their life, and it's hard. I mean, I get that, but I think having home right actually gives me more bandwidth when I go to work. I would say it that way. I like the idea of having something to go home to. I like the idea of knowing that there is stability. We live in a world now where the last statistic I saw, it said that 30% of people are struggling with depression and anxiety and stress and mental health issues. And I think so many times when all those things are not right, and I'm not a doctor here, so I don't, just take this for what it's worth. But I think a lot of times there's a lack of stability in all these areas of my life that are important, which leads to that stress and anxiety and sometimes even depression. And so I think there's just so much that when we get that part right, it just positions us to win. Like I said, when we win outside of work, I think it positions us to win at work. And another example, again, I've talked a little bit about the family here, but I would say physically, when we take care of our body, our energy. We eat the right things. We sleep, typically we undersleep. We don't sleep like we should. We don't hydrate the way we should. There's just some very low hanging fruit, some things that we can do. We all know them, but so many times we don't do what we know. And then we wonder why we don't feel better. And I think we have a chance just to take some baby steps here to really make things better. But when we get those things right, when we're well rested and we're well hydrated and we eat the right things and we don't eat the wrong things and we have relational strength and stability around us, who doesn't want to sign up for that? And yet it is an opportunity for us to make progress today. Anybody listening, we all can do better. We know that. And so I just would encourage every single person to really think about, if you have that stuff right outside of work, how much better are you going to be when you get to work? You're going to be more productive. You're going to create a competitive advantage. You're going to be more fun to work with. You're going to have more passion when you get there, all that stuff. So there's a lot of benefits.
Yeah, I love that for entrepreneurs, really, especially because it's normal to have the phone at the dinner table. And, I think this whole awareness of how are we living our life when we're not at the laptop? Um, who are we being? What stresses are we bringing into the home environment? Working from home, my partner works from home, personal experience, right? We work from offices across the hallway from each other. We meet for breakfast, we meet for lunch, and we meet for dinner. And then we're back into our little burrows, right? And we're working. And it's a wonderful lifestyle that we've created for ourselves. It's exactly what we wanted. Yet we do need to remember, leave the phone away from the kitchen table. It's not invited to the meals.
I like the way you said that. The phone is not invited to the meal. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, yeah. And also I notice, if he's stressed, then I can at least clock, well, he's not stressed at me. He's stressed at something that's going on. He's either distracted or and it works the other way too, trust me. And it's wonderful that we can give each other that room to say, I can see that the stressor is from outside. And so I think we can each help each other. As entrepreneurs, we're working from home, we're on top of each other a lot. I don't think this is just my story. I think this is probably true for many people who are working from home, building a business. And there can be a lot of stress in building a business. You've experienced that, Randy. Leaving a corporate job when you have 4 kids about to get married at some point soon, and you're building a new career. Like, tell us what that was like, that journey for you personally. And I have a feeling that it might be reflected in the book when you talk about John Williams and he met a mentor. I'm sussing that there might be some parallels between John Williams and Randy Gravitt.
Yeah, well, that's great. So let me say one thing. I want to comment on your breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I didn't say this. I mentioned if you work offsite to find a stop sign or a traffic light, but I love the idea, Vicky, of having a door jam in the home where when you walk through that door, you're actually going to leave work in the office and you can be there when you're there again. So, but to go back to the question, So there is a little bit of me in all the characters in the book, probably guilty as charged. I think there's a little. I think when people read this book, they're gonna relate to several of the characters because there's places where the mentor character we know the things to say, and you're a coach, you know some of those things, and then there's places where they'll relate to John. They do feel so many people feel stressed at work, and then they're not things are not right at home, and how do we balance all that? And as I look back on our story, Laura and I got married. My Laura and I got married, and had the four girls in the first few years, and we're just kind of going through the motions, building a family. Felt like work was great. Well, I mean, it was fun. It was great. But for me, there came a point where I wanted to see, can I try to help leaders think about things a little bit differently than what I was having the opportunity to on a broader scale. And so that goes a little bit back to the courage part. I just again remember where it was hard to it was really hard to stay fully engaged at work and fully engaged at home. And for every entrepreneur that's listening, or every small business owner that is listening, what I'm describing sounds easy. It's not easy. There's going to be, let's go back almost to our work life balance. There's going to be tension. I heard somebody say one time that balance is actually learning to live in the center of the tension. And so what I mean by that is work is pulling one way, or maybe work's going great, but marriage is not so great. Or work's going great and marriage is pretty good, but my kids are I got maybe it's just one of my kids that I'm having an issue with. And you maybe got people listening going, I don't have a kid. Work's going great, your relationship's going great, but you got maybe your health is not great. And so there's you're never going to get to a place of perfect. It's just not that's not who we are. We're human. And so I think we have to understand that the goal is to make progress. The goal is to embrace that tension and to live. Again, I like this idea of living in the center of the tension. There's going to be tension. If we can recognize that and have practices built into our life to calibrate and to create stability, again, I think that's where I would start. And so as I look back and think about the characters in the book, and yeah, I can relate to so much of what was said there about John. And for those who have not read the book, the first 120 pages is a parable about a business owner and his family and his business and all that. He's got a mentor that helps him kind of navigate and learn the fundamentals of building a great family. But I think the power of the book, maybe in the last 75 pages or so, where we have the blueprint built back there to help people. I say built back there, it's there to help people build the family that they want. And so there's some work on the part of the reader to say, okay, what kind of family do I want? And if you're going to build a home, you wouldn't just go to the lumber yard and buy some boards and bring them home and start nailing. I mean, you need a blueprint. You need a picture of what you're trying to build. And I think so many times at home, we really don't have that blueprint mindset. And so that's really what we were trying to do, is give people a way to say, hey, it is this way, but it doesn't have to stay this way. There's some things that we can do to build a great life outside of work.
Which then, as you and Laura have both discussed, brings you back to being a more successful leader, or if you're an employee, a more successful employee. If you're building your own business from home or from somewhere else, from Silicon Valley, it makes you a more successful that person. Because once we're whole inside, once we feel like we can trust ourselves to do the right thing by us, then we're always going to do the right thing by somebody else. And I think this is such a key point, because people look to the outside, the external factors. How do I do better at this, at this, at this, at this? It's all about doing, and the way I see the world, Randy, and no doubt you too, is how are you being? And I think this is what this whole conversation really centers around, is how am I being and who am I being? And once I've got that sorted and I'm really okay with that, and I'm doing my very best, I'm being my very best, being the person I choose to be, then everything else is going to it's going to overflow into every other aspect of your life. You can't help but for that to happen. It's a flip on how we've traditionally looked at leadership, at just living a good, healthy vibrant life.
I totally agree. I'll say it the way we talk about it a lot. I think so often leaders confuse activity with accomplishment. They're busy. They're always on the go. But if we're not careful, we'll just be busy, and we will not have again the relationships that matter most. If we take those for granted and we don't invest in those correctly, our if we use the bank account mindset, it'll be overdrawn. Those relationships will be overdrawn, and we don't want that. We want those to be they need to be growing with interest. They need to be compounding in a positive way. But that'll only happen if we make the investment in that. It's just not going to happen by chance.
Yeah, and I think the important thing too is the intentionality you've talked about, because it recently came to my awareness that, well, it was just put right in my face yesterday. We have 112 hours in a week. We have 112 hours in a week to that's the work week. If you're going to look at a work week,
When you're awake,
and when you're awake,
yeah.
112 hours. That includes the play. That includes the play, the meals, the together time, the kids' time, right? That includes all of it. That's such a tiny number. If we're not intentional with it, gosh.
It's so true. And think about it. No matter what we do, the one thing that is limited, and Laura said it earlier, it is our time. No matter how much you maximize whatever, you're not going to have any more time than what you have. And so I think doing the things that only you can do, and there's some leadership things that only you can do. If you're leading your company, you've got to have vision. You've got to be, you've got to make sure that vision stays clear. Let's think about that for a second. If our business is very successful and we go really fast, think about if you drive fast enough in a car. We all like to drive fast. If you go really fast in a car, you can go so fast that the signs become fuzzy. You can miss your exit. And that's true in our business. I mean, we can be going so fast. Our family, same way. We can go so fast that things get a little bit fuzzy. As leaders, if the vision is fuzzy to you, it's going to be blurry to the people who are following you. And so we've got to make sure that we've got time to pull up and lock in on the vision. Only you can do that if you're the leader. Well, only you can be the mom or dad if you are a mom or dad, and only you can be the spouse if you're a spouse. Only you can go to the gym and work out, or whatever you need to do. Like, there's things that only you can do. But there are other things that other people can do on our behalf, and I think sometimes we fail to encourage people, to equip people, to create a structure around us to increase our capacity to be able to do the things in our life that we need to do, and then let somebody else do what they need to do. And so that's where I found myself busy, but I'm not sure I'm doing the right things. And even in my company, I mean, I own my own company, and if I'm not careful, I can be the bottleneck of our business. I mean, and I think leaders who are listening, what do you need to do to get out of the way? It is not your job to do their job, whoever they are. It's your job to lead. And so I think about that a lot, and I want to make sure I have the people around me that can do what they're really great at, and I don't get in their way. And so anybody who's listening, that's true at work, but it's also true at home. There's things at home that only you can do. And so I want to encourage people to give some thought to that and pick an area, and just, you can't do everything, but you can do something. So just start there and see what happens.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And it just made me think about how, for a business, we often start with creating that big mission and the vision statements, and we plaster them on the walls and we put them in employee handbooks. But do we think about having a mission or a vision for our family? Like, what does our family want to be like? What do we want to accomplish together? What is our values? What are the most important things to us? What are our non-negotiables? Do we have those conversations with our children and our spouses? It's kind of important too, but it's easy to get caught up in the busyness of life And in work, there's always busyness of work, but in home life, there's busyness of going to dance lessons and football practice and XYZ of making dinner, and you can go on and on and on, and then forget what's truly important. So I love this conversation for really honing in on that. Like, what really is important? What can we be intentional about? So thank you for bringing those up. But I want to ask you, what one thing we haven't talked about is resilience and how that kind of fits in to what we're talking about today. So what's your opinion on resilience and how that fits into all this?
Well, I want to use the word adversity here for a second. I think it's I think sometimes there. I'm going to guess there are listeners who are going through something that's really hard right now, and I want you to think about. I was in Haiti actually a few years ago, and I had a driver who he he starts yelling at me. He didn't speak any English. He starts yelling at me in Creole. De mange. He's just yelling at me. And I'm like, what is he saying? And I have a translator, and the translator says, he wants you to see the mountains. And I'm like, okay, I see the mountains. And he said, it's an old Creole proverb. It means beyond the mountains, there are mountains. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, how wise is that? I think we think the goal is to get to the top of the mountain. But if we think about it for a second from a resiliency standpoint, it requires resilience to get to the top of the mountain. But if you just want to get to the top of the mountain and stay there, nothing grows on the mountain. I mean, I understand we think about mountains being small and there's houses there. And I'm talking about there are mountains you can go to and you can get high enough that stuff stops growing. The tree line stops, glaciers start forming. You can't live there. There's just not. It's great to go there. It's great to see those places and to view. But what happens is it just gives you a chance to have vision toward the next peak, so to speak. And if we think about our lives that way, I really like that. We have a time where we can pull up and we can have vision, and this is where we are, and this is where we were trying to get here, and we celebrate that, and that's great. But we all three know that stuff grows in the valley. One of my daughters told me this, Dad, stuff grows in valleys. That's where resilience comes from. And so when we're going through something hard, adversity, let's think of that word again. I think adversity increases our capacity to grow, to love, to lead. It's in the valley so many times that we fail to learn what we should be learning in those moments. And it is actually a gift that will actually help us get to that next peak. So that's kind of the way I think about it. I think, and by the way, I don't want to go through the valley. I'm not, none of us want to sign up for the valley, but I think when we're in it, we do have a chance to really to grow, and resilience gets stronger. And when I think of the best leaders I know, there is an element of resilience. Why I love the name of your podcast. It's like that is the deal. When you just know that you can count on somebody because they've been through the fire and they're still standing and they're with you. There's nothing better. So I love that mindset of letting our resilience forge be. It's like but when you start forging stuff, the steel forges in the fire, right? So you got to go through the fire. But we all do. We all have ups and downs. I heard somebody say one time, you're either in something hard, you just came out of something hard, or you're going into something hard. I mean, it's hard is going to be here. If we will understand that sometimes adversity can be a gift to increase our capacity, I think we handle it better. I don't think we'll have any more fun with it, but I think we can handle it better, and it can lead to something better down the road.
Oh, yeah, spot on. And if we know it's coming, then it's less of a shock. So we just get on with it, and then it doesn't feel so hard anymore because hard becomes familiar. I like to say that hard is unfamiliar. If something feels hard, it's simply because it's unfamiliar. We haven't done enough of it yet. So let's keep doing this hard thing and it will become familiar, and then we're good with it. So I love all those analogies that you've offered, and I absolutely love your daughter's summary. Stuff grows in valleys. I haven't heard it said that way before. I love it. I'm going to jump in and do my key takeaways, if that's all right with you guys. That's going to be one of them. Stuff grows in the valley. I love it. And balance is learning to live in the center of the tension. That's great. That's great. And I think, the conversation about leaders mistaking action for progress, that's such an important takeaway. And if if there's listeners out there, if you could just ponder on that, I'd invite you to, where are you being busy? Where are you taking action in your life that maybe you are mistaking it for progress? And where could you be busy somewhere else and actually advance your goals about who you're being, how you're being, and how that's impacting the rest of your entrepreneurial goals.
Oh, I like it. I like it. It's tough going after Vicky, I tell you. But I have a couple that I jotted down as we were talking too. One I really liked, you said early on, was you need to design a life, not live by default. Ooh, yeah, that one. Who wants to live by default? That one got me like right there. Design a life you want. Absolutely. I thought it was really good. Um, and the importance of being present at home. I think as an entrepreneur that works from home, so my home work life is very blurred. I've got kids, pick them up from school, come home, get on the computer. They're running around while I'm doing a podcast. Like my life is very blurred. It's very difficult to define that. But I like what you were saying about, maybe it's a door, maybe it's, something you're stepping into or out of that you can actually work ends here, life starts here. Keeping that in mind was really great. Um, and you can't outsource your family, like you as part of your family. Like you can't outsource yourself. Like you have to be there. You have to be the mom, the dad, the sister, the brother, the husband, whoever you are for your family. You have to be that person. You can't outsource that. So outsource everything else. There you go. There's the message. Outsource as much else as you can so that you can be as present as you can.
That's great, Laura. I always say you can't delegate your presence. I love the way you said that, though. I mean, it's you, only you can be there. I mean, for you. And so I love that. I think my takeaway would be when Vicky said that we don't invite our phones to the meal. That's just brilliant. Like we get to choose whether we turn it off or not. And I just think it would be so much better if we would not be so tethered to technology. Technology is a great thing. It allows us to be together all over the world here on this show today. But there are times to turn it off, and I think if we're not careful, that phone or that computer, it is vying for our affection, our attention. So that's a given. So we need to beware of that. I think the other thing I would say is one of you mentioned how do you not only become the right or the right leader at work as a boss, but how do you do this for your people? And we didn't really get into this, but I would say this: I I've met so many leaders over the last few months since the book came out who are saying we're trying to create an environment for our employees as well, not just to get this right myself, but how do I help my employees get it right? And so I would encourage people to not only get a copy of the book, but if you want to get a copy for your team, to do that, maybe start having a conversation around some of these principles together. And what I know or what I've seen through the years is when people are helping their people. Again, they're not your people; they're people. But when you're helping the people that you work with improve their life outside of work, they're actually going to be better at work as well. Your business is going to be more profitable. You're gonna have more impact, better jobs, all that stuff, more attractive place to work. I think the total person, Vicky, you mentioned that earlier. The total person is much more. We're paying much more attention to that these days than we did maybe years ago, and I think that's a good thing. So those are some of my takeaways. I want us to continue to just make progress. And if I could leave everybody with a thought here, it would just be really what we've talked about, this idea of being intentional. Only you can do what it is you need to do. And I just encourage every single person here to take a baby step. There's no need to think I have to take this massive leap into my preferred future. That typically happens one baby step at a time. And if we'll just do the right thing, I know it's the beginning of a new year. We'll just do the right thing day after day after day. You get to the end of the year and you're not where you were. I guess I would leave everybody with this question: what do you want to be true a year from at the end of the year, a year from today that's not true today, and then live toward that. And if you want to get crazy, think about your 80th birthday party What do you want to be true then? If you can define that and start walking toward it, I think you got a really great chance to, as Laura said, to design a fantastic life. And I think the people that you live with are going to have a lot of fun. They might even like you, not just love you. They may like you. So that'd be great.
The perfect way to end it. Randy, thank you so much. We're going to leave it right there. Thank you so much for being on our podcast today. We really appreciate your time.
Thank y'all. Thanks for all you do.